It's that time of day, Pete, for sports.
Yeah.
And I know you're always passionate about sports. And one factor in particular really has your underwear in a bundle tonight.
Well, here's why my underwear isn't a bit of a bundle, John. This whole world of NIL, name, image, likeness, for those people that don't really understand, where it's coming from, but they are essentially figured out a way in college football, college sports, but specifically football in this case, where, you know what, we're going to pay you guys something. We're going to give you money on top of your scholarship and everything else, which they didn't really think this thing through very well, John. But there's a kid out there right now named Dia Bell. Okay. His father played in the NBA for many, many years, was a very good player, not a star, but it's certainly a really good player. Well, this kid's coming out of the state of Florida. He's a quarterback, and the University of Texas gave him this offer. By the way, he's a junior in high school. This is for the class of 2026. So this kid's got an NIL deal for not bad. $9.2 million this kid's going to get. Yes, $9.2 million. Now, here's how it breaks down. When he signs the contract to go to the University of Texas, he gets $2 million right then and there. After that, John, he gets $1.6 million for every year that he's at Texas. Okay. I mean, so you add the whole thing up. Here we go. 9.2 million, 6'3" kids, got a cannon for an arm. Oh, by the way, they've already got a kid that they're paying a lot of money by the name of Quinn Ewers. And he's about done. He'll probably come out after this year. And after that, you're going to get Arch Manning, who's making a boatload of money himself. And then he'll be there for probably just 1 year, John, maybe 2. He's gone. And that's when Dia Bell's going to step in. What needs to happen is somebody's got to step in and say, hey, look, this has gotten out of control. There's got to be some sort of limits. This is not professional sports. This is still amateur sports. I don't mind the style of going out there and trying to figure out how the players as a group should be able to get some sort of money, some cut into what's going on in college sports. But John, I think this has gotten really way out of hand. How about you? And what do you think? And do you got any answers? I'm not saying I got the answers, but there's got to be something that's going to be fair for the players and also fair for the university, and also trying to keep it as close to amateur athletics as we can.
I think that ship has sailed, Pete, the amateur side. Some of these programs, and even some big name ones, I'm not going to try to go through them all, but some of the big name programs, Pete, have had boosters, if you will. That's what they used to call them. Now I guess you call them sponsors, maybe even. But, they gather some money from these sponsors, boosters, whatever, and they can do what they couldn't do before, which is pay these athletes. And when you're going after, a kid that 40 schools want this kid, obviously, 6'3", coming into his junior year, he's got, like Pete said, 2 more years before he competes for a job at the college level. And somebody's going to offer him $9 million. I would, if I was representing that kid, Pete, and I'm not an agent or a lawyer, but if I was representing that kid, I'd want to see some of that money put aside, not because the kid's going to blow it, because he doesn't get it until and unless he goes to Texas in this example, but I'd like to know the money's really there. Anybody can talk big about, oh yeah, we're going to pay him this, we're going to pay him that. Like I said, I could name you probably 10 schools that have failed to pay athletes that they promised this big cash to. Now, I've never heard of one this big, Pete, and certainly never heard of one out 2 years into the future before this kid shows up on a college campus to play football. Yeah, he'll be recruited in the meantime and wined and dined and everything else. I remember, Pete, back in the day, if they bought you more than a McDonald's when you were on a recruiting trip, the school could be taken up on charges. Now, who knows what they can do? So back to your point, though, I think they really need to examine some sort of, if a school makes a commitment like this to a kid, that there is some watchdog at least that's out there making sure the money's really there. Because again, there's a lot of talk, and not everybody walks the walk after they make that big talk.
And you and I have talked about, in some cases, we're very well aware of guys who had committed money, and then the kid says, sure. And then he gets there and they never got their money. So this is not like we're just pulling this out of nowhere. This has already happened. So John makes some very good points. All right, next up, John, how about the NFL? And this, again, involves financial side of the NFL, which is perfect for you and I. You played linebacker with Chicago Bears. I played with the Vikings and the Bucks and a couple other teams and all that type of thing. So we know a little something about the pro side of it. We also know a lot about the financial side of it, even though the numbers have changed dramatically since we played. But I think Roger Goodell actually is kind of onto something, but I can also understand why the players have a little bit of pushback, John. He wants to do this. He wants to take, of the 3, remember there used to be 4 preseason games, right? Then they went to 3. Now, they're talking about possibly his idea would be, let's scrap 3 games. Let's make 2 preseason games. Gives the players the opportunity to play in a game-like circumstances and everything. And that's just great. And instead, we'll just have 2 of those. And instead of just dropping everything, we'll add and get 18 games during the regular season, as opposed to, it used to be, for the people who don't know this, I mean, you don't have to go too far back. It was 12 games. Then it was 16. We moved to 17, and now Goodell's talking about 18. We all know the preseason's a joke. We all know that the majority of the stars are probably not going to be playing in most of the games, if at all, in some of these games. So that's just a given. But the players' pushback is this, John. Well, you get another game, it's still the same dollars. So we're taking a pay cut, is what they're saying. And I'm not disagreeing with that, but I would also say this. There's the potential, John, that the preseason games, because of the viewership being really low and everything else, this could boost that back up again, and maybe you can manipulate those numbers around to some degree. I'm not sure what the exact answer really would be, but the players right now get about 48% of the revenue. The players want 60%. I don't think they're going to get 60%. But I think that there might be some room, even though this is not part of the collective bargaining right this second. But there's probably room between 48 and 60, wouldn't you think, as far as the revenue split?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of room between 48 and 60, Pete, especially since we're talking billions of dollars here. And I remember sharing with Pete, folks, a video of Campbell, the coach for the Detroit Lions, talking about why he needs live hits in practice. And he was being rather emotional about it too, Pete. And he said, look, I'm not doing this as a hamburger drill. This is my words, hamburger drill, or, something where you're trying to make the kids tougher or see who's tough or whatever, and do one-on-one tackling drills from 10 yards apart. They don't really do that kind of stuff, Pete, but it is important to do live contact. And a lot of that has been written out of their players' contracts, where they don't have to do that anymore. And he's like, hey, man, if we're not doing it, then you guys, by the 6th game, you'll finally kind of get it that we need to be doing this, because the first 5 games, you're, taking some bad hits because you're not game ready. And these are all my words. That's not directly Dan Campbell quotes, but nonetheless, that is more or less, I think, the way that he views it, Pete, and I view it too. I wouldn't want to run a bunch of grown men through some of the drills that you and I had to do back in the day, but I do know that it does help to put your body in the right position when you're making a tackle. And the injuries weren't nearly as fierce back then as they are now, because a lot of these guys aren't in the right position when they're making that hit. It's not just that some of the players are much bigger and faster. It's that they're not in the right position to make that play because they haven't practiced it.
Right. It's all about game ready, right? I mean, you and I both know what that means. A lot of people probably don't. It's not basketball. This isn't hockey. It's none of those. It's football. And there's a lot of fundamental pieces that are parts of the puzzle. How to tackle correctly. Even when you're really good at it, you still got to practice doing it. So I think that that's kind of the Dan Campbell thought process is, hey, look, I'm not going to beat the crap out of you. We're not going 11 on 11. We're probably not even doing much in the way of 7 on 7, but we're going to work on some of the tackling drills so that we are in that game shape, because otherwise, John, you could go through a big chunk of the season. And if you're really only having full contact on game day, there's going to be fundamentals that are going to be lost. We've already seen it. They don't know how to tackle in the NFL anymore. It's not the player's fault. It's because they never practice it. So it makes for some interesting runs every once in a while and all the rest of it. And everybody's like oohing and ahhing over what a great running back this guy is. Well, it's because the linebackers don't know how to tackle anymore. They just run in there and throw in the shoulder, and that's about it. So I do think that Dan Campbell's onto something here, and it's going to be something, but it's also about the money. It's always about the money. No matter what, you always want to follow the money. You and I talked about that. We've got a book about that. That's the same thing in the NFL. These guys, the second they said 18 games, the players immediately didn't say anything about the games themselves being physical. They said, pay us more money. I mean, so follow the smart money, right, John?
Just as the book, folks, it's not an option. So make sure you check out It's Not an Option. If you go to the website, you can claim the book. It's $9.95 to ship it, but the book is free.